Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the first day of Modex Day 1, and you decided to come here to talk about and learn about software. Good for you guys. Software is often the unsung hero of the distribution center, and so whether you're here supporting us or just here to learn a little bit more, we appreciate you being here, especially on day 1 with all the crazy tech that's out there right now. I'm Michael Rowe, Vice President of Sales. This is DJ, software programmer for DMW&H. Some of you may know us from W&H. We decided to expand the name because of a merger, and we wanted to make it very difficult for you to say and remember the name of our company as well. Try to say it 10 times fast, we'll give you a pair of socks, which we have in our booth. Okay, so as we discussed today, we're going to be talking primarily about data, breaking bottlenecks with data, how smart integration transforms operations. Let me tell you a little bit about what that means. So everybody knows how important data is when it comes to transforming your distribution operations. Data is the foundation of all design, all process, even technology selection as well. It's kind of weird to think that when you are building a distribution operation, whether large, small, retrofit, greenfield, it's interesting to think that data, being the foundation of all of it, is going to determine what the technologies are going to be. The reason that that's so important is because it's all, as accurate as you may think it can be, it is all still hypothetical. It's still a guess. And so when we say we're going to collect data and we're going to see where you are today and we're going to see where you might go tomorrow, it's all a guess. It's an educated guess, but it's still a guess. The idea is to try to get a little bit more certainty around data collection and design. In an uncertain world, data helps us become just a little bit more certain. It drives direction, technology, longevity, and it shows you how to right-size your operations if you're doing things correctly for the long term. And when I say right-size your operations, traditionally with inflexible technology and data, WES or control systems within the facility, it was very rigid. These days it has to be flexible. With the rigidity of days in the past, you would have to build something, you'd have to build it all for what's to come over the next 5 to 10 years, and you'd have to live with it. Well, what if the business changes? What if it doesn't grow as much as you thought it would be? Well, that's where the flexibility comes into play as well. So you have to be able to not necessarily build a church for Easter Sunday, but have a modular approach as well, to where if the business does grow, well, you haven't spent a bunch up front or all that you have to. You can spend a little bit more as you grow as well. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to show how data, software, and tech all come together to form the ideal solution specific to your operation. And hang around. So typically these things end with questions. We're not going to do that. We're going to end with some questions, but then at the very end of this, we're going to show you how everything that we talk about today comes together. We're going to show you a real example of what one of the DCs that we're working on now for a large beverage wholesaler looks like. And it's going to show you all the technology. It's going to talk a whole lot about software, controls, and data. So hang around after questions just for a few minutes, and then of course we can talk after up here and at the booth as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about just who we are, a quick introduction. Again, name of the company is DMW&H. We've been around for a very long time, since the 60s. We're what's called an integrator. For those of you that don't know, we design systems turnkey from start to finish. It starts with data collection, which we're going to talk a lot about today. We'll work through that together. We'll design the entire facility. We'll procure equipment from all over the world, put it together, and make sure that we support it 24/7 and it's specific to your operation. We are different than an OEM because we don't just sell what we can. We sell what makes the most sense for your operation. So it's not, well, you have a problem, luckily this is what I sell and it's going to solve it. It never happens. With us, we have choice, so it's not unusual to bring in technologies from everywhere to make sure it is perfect for your distribution operations. We've been around since the 60s. The old wives' tale is that DMW&H, or W&H at the time, started in New York on the exact same day that the Beatles landed in New York. I know it's the same year. We like to tell ourselves, same day too, we're rock stars. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, hopefully you remember us a little bit too. But we are known for our experience, particularly in the beverage space. But what we do a ton of as well are retail, apparel, and a lot of post and parcel. So think Amazon, FedEx, UPS. Sky's the limit. So we do a lot. Most of our revenue comes from repeat clients. We're very big on partnership. We are not the biggest integrator out there, and that is intentional. It is controlled. We're one of the largest, but we focus so heavily on customer experience and repeat clients, so we want to make sure we don't get too big to serve our clients. And so when I first started, we had 40 or 50 of us. Now we've got about 200. You see a lot of mergers and acquisitions in our industry. We did that a decade ago, and we haven't since, and that is 100% intentional for customer service. One of the few companies, and I'll be quick, we have zero debt. Why is that important for you? Well, because you know you're safe. If you work with us for a project, you can know bills are getting paid. We're one of the few companies, because of those mergers and acquisitions, that we don't have any debt. It's great. And lastly, and this one I'm very proud of, there's a survey every single year. Our company is based in New Jersey. I'm not, you can tell. We have an anonymous survey for the best places to work in our state, which is New Jersey. We have consistently been on that list as one of the best places to work for over 10 years now. That's voted on by us. It's completely anonymous. I think if you have happy employees, you got happy distribution centers as well. Okay, enough about us. Let's talk about you guys and talk about the state of the industry. So here's what some of our clients are saying. Well, I'll just ask you guys, who's having a problem with labor? Raise your hand. Labor, software, AI, everything is changing. Labor is probably the one that we hear about the most. It's hard to attract, it's hard to retain. They say nobody wants to work in a warehouse anymore, especially the younger generation as well. The times they are changing, and it's getting even more expensive to draw in labor. I mean, how many times do you bring in somebody, you find a good candidate, you train them up, everything's good for a month or two, and then they leave for a couple of bucks more for somebody down the street. It happens a lot, and that's where automation, software, all of this comes into play. It's changing at a rapid pace, especially on a software front, and that is primarily due, or in part due, to AI. If you go to a presentation or a booth this week and they don't talk about AI, look elsewhere. It's what you have to focus on these days. It's changing everything, and we're certainly acclimating to that environment as well. But more importantly, when you would come to a trade show like ProMat or Modex, most people would focus on the mechanical aspect. The things that you see moving around, that's what's easy to understand. Conceptually, especially, is I'm guilty of this too, saying, gosh, if we could just take this piece of equipment and plug it in, all the problems for this client or for our prospects are going to be solved. But it's rarely the case that is going to be what fixes it. The unsung hero, and what we'll talk about a lot today, is software and controls. Software and controls are arguably more important because they have to keep up with the tech, not only today, but tomorrow as well. Think of software as kind of the brains, the controls is the brains, but all the tech is kind of the muscle. You can't really have one without the other, and software is becoming even more important because of the rapid change today. It used to be in the background, now it's out the forefront. In short, the market is changing, and running a more intelligent and flexible operation is going to be key for your business.
All right, and what do we mean by a more intelligent operation, and how do we get there? So as we talk about the labor disruptions and these different things that we're seeing in the market, it's not only the frontline employees that we're seeing labor disruptions with, it's also management, supervision, and that floor level orchestration of the operation where we see some struggles that we need to address with our software. Because it's not just the managers that we need to train to know how to use a system. The system needs to know how the system is supposed to work so that we can provide insight back to those floor level managers and supervisors to be able to better run that operation on a day-to-day basis, because those guys are also tough to field, retain, attract, and bring into the business. And we want to make sure that we can onboard those kinds of people quickly and have them up and running just as fast as you can have a picker up and running on the pick floor or something like that. So planning is where the brains of a WES are really going to shine and help those managers out. And we'll get a little bit more into what a WES is later on in our presentation here. Now, of course, we don't want to forget about the front line because those people are still going to be critical, obviously, to getting the work done on a day-to-day basis. And also, we don't know necessarily as we go into an operation whether that front line is going to be people picking or if that front line is going to be machines picking. Are we going to automate some of that labor? Are we going to automate all of it today? Maybe we'll automate some of it later. We need to make sure that that frontline execution of day-to-day tasks has a simple to-the-point interface and allows those people to come in, knock their job out for the day, and go home, or allows those machines to run efficiently with proper feedback for the management team so that those guys can move seamlessly from task to task with little disruption, or when they run into a disruption that we have a way out for those guys to get to the next thing and make sure that our system handles that smoothly.
We got it.
You got it.
I need to update your software. We got a few this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, pay attention to this. Okay, so DJ a minute ago was talking about a WES. Our industry is world famous for thousands and thousands of acronyms where we all think we know what we're saying, but we might all be saying something different. So for the sake of simplicity and transparency on this presentation, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some general terms so that we understand what we're talking about moving forward. We've talked about a WES. I'll get to that in a moment. The way this all started primarily was through a WCS, a warehouse control software. It's kind of like the first step into software within a distribution center. It manages automated equipment within the distribution center. It's kind of the least amount of software to run a traditional, we'll say like a conveyor-like system. We used to offer a controls-only software called Shiraz. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. On the other hand, you've got a WMS. I'd imagine anybody that's in the industry or runs an operation has a WM. Stands for Warehouse Management System or software, depending on who you ask. That's going to handle more comprehensive warehouse operations. I don't need to harp on that. I have a feeling most people are familiar with it. There are dozens of them out here as well. But then, over the past few years, WES became the prevalent source of software and controls within and even outside the distribution center as well. WES, sometimes we call it a WES, stands for Warehouse Execution System or Warehouse Execution Software. It combines both a WM and a WCS. Controls inventory, replan, receiving, automation logic, task management, you name it. And that's what interfaces with many technologies in the market today. I put it this way, if you don't have a robust and flexible WES in your operations, you're behind. You're way behind, and you're going to be playing catch up for a long time. There is no good time to do it. You just have to bite it off and move forward. It's going to probably be a little painful at times too, but you'll be really glad that you have it in place, especially if it can adapt to technology today and what's to come tomorrow. You ask, well, how can we do that? We'll get into that a bit too.
All right, so what is the WES there for? So our WES is going to help us plan the work and make sure that we keep the business moving throughout the day and stick to the plan and also keep a record of that plan. So the WES is there to help control all the automation technologies in the facility. Good Lord. Whether we have a WM in place that might be covering some of that, or a WCS that's covering the conveyors, we're going to have our WES layer in between to help keep those two systems in sync and to help potentially better manage some of the parts of the warehouse that the WM might not be quite well equipped for when we introduce automation technology. So a WMS, for example, might have a way to run a wave for picking or something like that. But it's common that a WM system either has a rudimentary method of doing that or only has one way, and you might want to introduce an automation system that requires some more advanced waving logic to go through it, and we can use the WES layer to help kind of bridge that gap between the WCS and the WMS and provide a more intelligent way of running the warehouse operation. Essentially, what we're trying to do with the WES layer is make sure that the rules that are governing the warehouse are configurable and only constrained by the physical machine constraints and not by logical constraints put in place because the system wasn't purpose-built to do the thing that you're trying to do with it. And so for us, we offer a WES system called Indigo. So you'll see that here at the center of the diagram. And essentially what we've designed our system to do is be positioned to cover anything or everything in the warehouse that it needs to do. So if we need help managing inventory, we can manage just the inventory. If we need help managing some picking operations through standard pick lines and things like that, pick to conveyor, we can manage that. We've got a system coming up with an ASRS where we're covering the inventory and the mission movement throughout the ASRS. So essentially we've got a plug-in to fit in where we need to, and it allows us to be agnostic and continue to integrate with all sorts of different suppliers, and also with some of the homegrown tools and things like that that we're starting to see pop up more and more and more from different places, especially with data and reporting and things like that. We want to make sure that we have a connector into anything that we can to help the operation run to the best of its capability. And then how do we literally do that? So we've got a modular system of containerized applications and services that we can turn on and off the parts of the system that we may or may not need for a given distribution center. And it allows us to execute those deployments quickly and make sure that we can make a seamless update if we need to. And then secondarily over here, this gives us the added benefit of being able to stay up to date with the ever-changing cybersecurity landscape. As you guys know, those things change week to week to week, so we've got to have a way to patch in anything that happens from a vulnerability standpoint quickly and effectively.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, how many people in here are using kind of a Microsoft-based server solution, Windows, something like that? The thing about Microsoft, and that's how you did it back in the day, our WCS Shiraz was based on Microsoft Server because it's the only choice that we had when it was developed decades ago. The problem with that is every 10 years or so, it's out of date. Microsoft says, hey, listen, you got to update your server, and with that, you got to update our stuff too. This is mostly customer driven to say, man, I don't want to do that anymore because every time we had to, it's expensive, it's time consuming, it can be disruptive, it's absolutely necessary. And again, it's not as exciting as some of the stuff you see out here, but it is pertinent that you do that. So we looked at it, and again, our customers saying, can you do more than just controls? And we said, yeah, I just don't want to step on the toes of the WM. So we made it super flexible where Microsoft is still something you want to do. Have at it. If you don't want to pay license fees and you want to go Linux, you can certainly do that as well. As long as it's containerized, we're in good shape. On top of that, it does have more WM capability in it, and that's because we built it ourselves. When you look around and you talk to a software type company or integrator like us that says, hey, we offer a WES, that means one of two things. One, the easier route is they probably partnered with somebody, maybe bought in, whether they licensed it or just bought the company and folded it in. It is faster. Oftentimes, it's less expensive for that integrator or company to offer, but they sacrifice one thing, control. You can't have total control over something if you didn't develop it yourself. And that's going to be the name of the game in automation. You never want to be in a spot where you're down and you got nowhere to go. I'll give you a good example. We had a company of ours that we've worked with for a long time. As an integrator, it's our job to be a partner, offer what makes sense. Other things, companies would get directly from another source. In this particular case, we did about 90% of the building. Another 10% they did direct themselves. And it was a highly automated portion of the system. No big deal. We do it all the time. Implementation was good. Go live was good as well. But it's what happens after that's even more important. About a year in, that one piece of technology, it went down. Well, there were 2 support contracts. They'd call us, and we weren't allowed to touch that. They'd call the other company, and they didn't have the resources available to address the problem. The site was down for an extended period of time. That's lost dollars for you. We swore to never let it happen again. We're very flexible, but we have the capacity to handle those type of technologies and equipment now. So that means when you call, we have a 24/7 line, you get a real engineer on the phone, and we troubleshoot right away. 90-something% of the time, it's not mechanical. It's usually software and controls driven, which you can access and repair remotely most of the time. So again, a lot of this was born out of necessity. It was born out of a request from our customer. The second way that you can handle a WES is do it all yourself. And again, it goes back to that control part that we were talking about. We did it ourselves in-house, and it's really risky because let's just say that you take all the time, all the money, it's much more expensive to do it this way. You build a team around it and you create a product. Who's to say anybody's going to want to like it or buy it? That's the risk. But we decided to do that ultimately so we can maintain control and have uptime on the systems be a lot higher. So it's really important. I know this stuff is like not as whiz bang, but you'll be thankful that you have the good brains behind the operation and that somebody put in the time and effort. You don't have to worry about it nearly as much. An inherent risk of automation, it's going to go down. Well, what happens when that happens? Make sure you have the right team to support behind that. Bingo.
Boom. And one of the other advantages that this system design gives us is that we're able to pull data together from various different sources fairly easily. So we can pull, obviously, the PLC and SCADA type data together. We have our own WCS and WES data that we can collect. But then since we're already set up as a warehouse orchestrator, we're able to import data from other sources to provide visualization and dashboards and alerts and other sorts of things to put what's going on in the operation in front of you in a clear and easy to understand type of way. And what we're going to do with that data is use it to help us make decisions to move forward and continue to deliver an intuitive system that can, again, handle anything or everything that needs to be managed inside of your warehouse. So we are able to use that process of collecting data and then continue to analyze that data to determine if there is any additional support needed to get to the desired outcomes that we defined in the discovery phase and initial parts of the project that Michael will go through here in a minute. So it's obviously very important when we talk about implementing one of these systems to make sure we fully understand the goals and targets of the operation. Is the prime goal to increase the rate of throughput in the facility, or is the prime goal to reduce the labor in the facility as much as humanly possible? Depending on the answer to that question, we might come up with a different technical solution. So we have to make sure that we dig into that and really understand it before we come up with the final solution for the warehouse.
Every time.
Try it?
Every time. We're stuck. No, we're not. When it rains, it pours, yeah? Okay, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because we've already touched on it a little bit. It's important when selecting a partner that you have a robust WES offering. You need to make sure that you start with data. You need to be completely agnostic with your software controls and technology's approach. You don't just say, this is what I make, this is what we sell. And then you have to have somebody support it thereafter. You got to future-proof technologies and your operations so that you can build on gradually or not. The business is going to change. You don't want to build it all on day one. You have a flexible, modular approach. Let's go back to some of your stuff.
So what that flexible modular approach is going to help us out with is supporting dynamic labor allocation, inventory and throughput visibility, and then using the data gathered from those things, we can then do some bottleneck detection and workflow optimization. So again, once we understand what our requirements are and we put our solution in place, then we're going to use that information to... There you go.
She's a little stuck.
Yeah. There we go.
Now we're cooking.
Oh, now we're too far.
No.
Kill it.
There we go.
So we're going to use that information to help support dynamic labor allocation. So the reason we wanted to shoot for a dynamic labor allocation solution is to try to help us get a little bit of an advantage in the market. Again, we see in a lot of cases with kind of classic WM systems and different things that have labor allocation features that the solution is often quite rigid and requires the operations to run maybe, let's say, too close to the happy path where the operator doesn't necessarily have a way out if they run into a blocker or something like that. So what we try to do with our WES system is make sure that essentially the user always has a way out if they run into something that was unexpected, that they can pause their task and be dynamically reallocated to something else. Or if your supervisor is looking at a dashboard and sees that I've got one section of my building that's consistently over-allocated or one section of my building that's consistently under-allocated, we can try to provide some feedback to help them make a decision to do something about that and take action to reallocate either labor, or it might be a slotting issue. It could be something that's not directly labor, but something that's influencing labor. But again, we can dynamically allocate around that and then provide some data to give them the feedback to find the root cause of the problem and actually get to a solution. And then the outcome of that labor doing things in the warehouse on a day-to-day basis is that inventory is going to move around. So we need to make sure that we have full visibility to the movement of that inventory and that the throughput data is there in front of the management team for everybody to see, so we have transparency into the operation and what's going on. This part in particular is kind of, I guess, near and dear to me. So before getting into this side of the business, I was an inventory manager for several years while I was going through college. I worked on a pilot automation project that had a inventory system that was fantastic as long as you were doing everything exactly as designed. And so as soon as we got through the go live of the system installation and moved into day-to-day operations, we started seeing shrinkage issues and things like that we had trouble to explain. We can't find product, and 9 times out of 10, that was happening because an operator was doing something that they thought was the right thing to do because something was damaged and they moved it to a certain area. But that system just didn't give them the capability to input the information required to record that that's what they were trying to do, so they would just go and do it outside the world of the system. Then the inventory is gone, even though somebody was trying to do the right thing. And so, again, that just goes back to the initial data collection and really understanding warehouse operations and making sure that people have the ability to do the things that they do on a day-to-day basis in the warehouse, and that the software doesn't stand in the way of the person doing it, but rather just records the information, make sure that management has visibility to it, and then if management sees something that's an issue, they can go ahead and take action with that person that did that thing and try to correct the thing, but we don't lose visibility to our inventory in the process. And then, again, what are we going to do with all this data once we've collected it and we know what the labor allocation looks like, we see the throughput, we've got this inventory data, then we can use all of that to do some data analysis to diagnose and solve any system flow inefficiencies, try to find places where we can either, again, add labor, subtract labor, add new technology, whatever the case may be. We want to put the bottleneck in front of somebody and say, here's the information that you need to make a good decision, to say, I know that I need to make a change in my operation, and then we can add, layers on top of that as we understand KPIs to help them decide either what to do or to say, I have no solution for this right now. I need to go seek out either a new process or a new piece of technology to help me solve this bottleneck.
Yeah, and those screens that he was showing, those are real screens that we have. In our booth, we've got a demo as well. You should come by and take a look at it. This is the summary. We'll have questions, but then I want to show you a real distribution center, a real system that we put together based on a lot of these principles. So I'll be quick on this. Data is going to drive everything. A robust and flexible WES is mandatory for operations today. We've talked about unifying the system through technologies as well, but it often starts with the data and the software. Everything else can connect thereafter. You need to have 24/7 support for this thing. You need to make sure that when you work closely with your team, the data and choice of tech gives the ability to future-proof your operations. Quick.